It came on a wind-torn afternoon. A sealed envelope slid under the door of the saloon room I'd rented. Inside, 3 things: a location, an obscene amount of money, and a line written in fading ink. Bring him back if you can. No name, no alive or dead, just that. The wax carried a strange mark, a crooked cross inside a circle. I rode north. The air turned colder the farther I went, like the land itself was warning me off. Telegraph poles leaned broken, their wires humming with nothing. Every hoofbeat echoed too long, like it was bouncing off something hollow. They'd told me the place was called Red Hollow, but on the road, no one seemed to know it. Or worse, they pretended not to. At dusk, I met an old drover at the crossroads, eyes cloudy, hands shaking from the cold. I showed him the note. He looked at it a long while before saying, "If you ride north, don't do it after dark. Roads up there don't lead back the same way twice." I offered him a coin. He didn't take it, and when I turned to mount up, he was gone. No tracks, no sound. I reached the town by sunrise, quiet but not dead. Footprints in the mud, a wagon half loaded, a lamp burning behind the sheriff's window, but no people, not a soul, just the sound of wind, like breathing through wood. The saloon doors creaked open, chairs set, piano covered in dust, a bottle on the counter, and one glass half full. The surface still rippled as if someone had just set it down. Behind the bar hung a cracked mirror. It caught my face in broken pieces. Only for a second. I swear the reflection blinked, and it wasn't me. The sheriff's door was unlocked. Inside, papers scattered, lamp still burning low. A coat hung behind the chair, dustless like it'd been left there yesterday. On the desk lay a ledger open halfway through. Dates, names, then the same one written again and again in darker ink. Caleb Crow. Every entry ended the same way. Returned. But there were no return dates, just the word carved into the paper like a scar. On the wall hung a single photograph. Sheriff, deputy, 2 townsfolk, and 1 man I didn't know. Tall, eyes blurred by the age of the print, but somehow looking right at me. The name scratched under his boots. Caleb Crow. I tore the photo down. Behind it, carved into the wood, "Still here." The cells were empty, but one door was locked from the inside. I forced it open and found a chair facing the wall, rope coiled around its legs. No sign of struggle, just a mark burned into the floorboards, same circle and cross from the letter. And on the wall, a message written in charcoal. He said he'd come back for us. I heard it then, bootsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy. I drew my gun, held still. They stopped right outside the door. The handle turned halfway, then froze. A voice whispered, dry as sand, "Sheriff ain't here no more." I kicked the door open. Nothing. Just dust drifting in the morning light. But the footprints were wet. Back at the desk, I flipped the ledger to the final page. It was blank, until ink began to bleed through from nowhere. Line by line, handwriting appearing slow, deliberate. Return recorded, witness present. Bounty man, then my name. I slammed the book shut, but the words were still burning through the cover, like fire trying to escape. Red Hollow had one hill on its edge, a rise of stone that looked carved more than made. From there, you could see the whole town, and how still it really was. Up top stood a church, or what was left of one. No bell, no sound, just a tower with a hollow mouth, and a door that swung open and shut with the wind, like it was breathing. Inside, everything smelled of ash. The pews were lined, untouched, but every Bible had been gutted, pages cut clean out. On the altar lay a single boot print, fresh, pressed into dust that hadn't been disturbed for years. It led to the pulpit. Behind it, a small trap door. I lifted the hatch. Cold air spilled up, smelling of metal and rain. A ladder went down farther than the lamplight could follow. I descended, boots echoing, and the sound didn't come back right. It came back late, like the walls were answering in delay. At the bottom, a narrow hallway. Candles burned low, their wax still warm, and scratched into the stone, over and over, that same mark, the crooked cross inside the circle. A room opened at the end. Wooden table, 6 chairs, all facing an empty space on the wall where a portrait used to hang. Only the frame remained. The canvas had been torn out, clean, no scraps left. On the table I found another ledger, blank, except for one line near the middle. He preached with fire. We listened. The candle beside it flickered once, then died. When I climbed back up, the air was different, colder. The town below seemed moved somehow, like the buildings had shifted a little in the dark. I couldn't tell how or why, but I swear the saloon wasn't where I'd left it. And on the church wall outside the door, someone had written in the dust, "Still looking?" The wind picked up, and from the hollow bell tower came one single note. Not loud, not long, just enough to let me know something up there was awake. The wind stopped halfway through the valley that night. No crickets, no river, no pulse, just the sound of my own boots, and something following them. It wasn't footsteps, not exactly. It was softer, like someone dragging their breath behind mine. A half-second late. I turned around twice. Nothing. The fog was thick enough to choke on, and the road back to town had disappeared. Then I saw it, a flicker of light ahead. Not lantern light, not fire, just a faint, steady glow seeping through a window. The old record office, the one they said was condemned years ago. I stood there, watching that pale square of light, and realized something that made my throat tighten. The reflection in the window was moving, but I wasn't. The breath behind me stopped, and from somewhere in that house, a woman's voice whispered just once, "You shouldn't have come alone." I didn't go inside that night, but I knew, somehow, she'd be waiting. Morning came like a trick, too quiet, too clean. I stepped into the old records office. Dust floated in the light like snow that never landed. And on the far wall, a clock. Black hands, no ticking, just stillness. The air felt wrong, like the whole room was holding its breath. She was already there. I hadn't noticed her at first, and when she spoke, it startled me more than I'd admit. Leaning on a file cabinet, cigarette between her fingers, eyes sharp enough to cut the fog I brought in. "You're late," she said. "Didn't know I was expected," I answered. She smiled, not with her mouth, but with something behind it. "Everyone who comes here is expected." Her badge read Evelyn Gray, though the name felt borrowed. She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder with my handwriting on it. That stopped my heart cold. I hadn't written that name in years, not since the night I lost them. "You've been looking for someone," she said. "A ghost," I muttered. "Not always dead," she corrected. The clock on the wall hadn't moved a second. I looked at it again, his hands frozen at 3:17. Same minute as the last entry in the police report. Same minute they said she vanished. "Is that clock broken?" I asked. Evelyn didn't look up. She just exhaled smoke and said, "It works fine. You just haven't moved yet." Her words hung in the air like smoke that didn't know where to go. She slid a photo across the table. It was me, standing outside that same building last night. Except I never went in. The window behind me glowed white, and something in the reflection looked like a second figure. Her. Evelyn closed the folder, stood up and said, "You'll go back there tonight." "You always do." The ticking started, slow, heavy. 3:17, and a heartbeat later, again. Evelyn's chair was empty. The cigarette still burned, but the smoke hung in place, not rising. I left the office without breathing. Outside, the wind had died again. And somewhere behind me, that sound, the one that followed me, had started walking too. The town had gone quiet again, not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like someone's listening. Somewhere out there, a screen door creaked, then stopped halfway. Inside the station, the air was thick with dust and heat. One bulb kept flickering, fighting the dark like it knew it was losing. I poured myself a cup of coffee. It tasted like rust and something older. That's when I saw the clock, still frozen at 3:17. I told myself I didn't care, but my eyes kept finding it anyway. Evelyn was there, same desk, same faint cigarette haze around her. I asked if she ever went home. She said, "Home's wherever the work doesn't stop." I tried to smile at that, but her tone didn't sound like a joke. Her eyes didn't move when she spoke. It was like she was waiting for something behind me to answer. She handed me a file. No label, no markings, just dirt smudges and a faint scent of smoke. "These were found near the dig site," she said. "You might want to take a look." I opened it. Photos of the same building I'd been in, only it looked older. Rotten boards, no roof, and my own shadow in one of the corners. I asked when they were taken. She said, "Before it was rebuilt." I told her, "This place looks fine now." She tilted her head. "Does it?" I looked around. The ceiling groaned, paint peeled in slow curls. The air smelled like something burnt long ago. I didn't answer. She leaned closer. "You ever think some places don't rebuild? They just remember?" I wanted to laugh it off, but the way she said it, calm, almost kind, made it sound like a warning. Her eyes drifted to the clock. It hadn't moved. I turned to say something, and the second hand twitched once, backward. When I left the office, the street was empty again. The wind carried a faint electric buzz, like wires singing under tension. The sound followed me halfway down the block. I looked back through the glass door. Evelyn was still standing there, but her reflection wasn't. The morning came slow, like it wasn't sure it should. Light cut through the blinds in thin stripes, dust hanging in it like smoke from a war that never ended. Evelyn wasn't there. Her chair sat turned slightly, as if she'd just stepped out, or had never been real enough to leave. On her desk, the same file from last night. Only now there was a new label, Reed, E, my own name. I opened it. Inside were photographs, places I'd been, people I barely remembered. One picture showed me walking into this very building, taken from behind. Another standing at the gravesite outside town. But the last one, that one froze me. It was a close-up of my face. Only my eyes were closed, and someone had written "Found" across the bottom in red pencil. I heard the hum of the lights change, a low static crawling along the ceiling. Something in the wiring was whispering. Not words, just a sound like breath on glass. I turned, half expecting her to be there again, cigarette lit, smirking like she knew what I'd seen. But the office was empty. The only thing that moved was the smoke from the ashtray, still warm. I went through the rest of the file. Old letters, stamped reports, transcripts of conversations. Most of them didn't make sense. Except one page. Interview 04, subject, Reed, E. You came back sooner than expected. Didn't know I left. They never do. The words burned a hole right through me. Outside, the sky was the color of dry bone. No birds, no wind. Just that faint electric hum again, running under everything. I needed to breathe, but the air felt borrowed. I looked back at the station door. Through the glass, I could see the outline of the clock on the wall, still stuck at 3:17. When I turned the corner, Evelyn was standing by the edge of the road, coat fluttering in the heat. She didn't wave, didn't move. "You opened it," she said. "You tell me what I saw," I answered. She smiled faintly, eyes reflecting something that wasn't sunlight. "You saw enough to start forgetting." Then she walked away, and the sound of her boots faded like static. Couldn't shake it off. The shimmer, the noise, it followed me back. I still had the file Evelyn left, light as dust, heavy as guilt. Name on the cover, Natalia Ferrer, night nurse, Ward 3. Date, 2 days before the clock stopped. It smelled of smoke and disinfectant. Old paper always tells the truth. It doesn't age well around lies. The report said she was alone on duty when the power went out. The backup lights came on, flickering like nervous eyes. She wrote, "I heard the ticking before I saw it." There wasn't a clock in Ward 3. That line stayed under my skin, like she was talking to me, not whoever took her statement. They found an audio tape in her locker. I played it in Evelyn's office. The sound bled through the old recorder, faint breathing, the hiss of old air vents. Then a voice whispering, "It's 3:18 again. It won't stop." Something metal scraped, then silence. A chair falling over, maybe. Or something heavier. Evelyn didn't look at me while the tape played. When it ended, she just said, "She wasn't supposed to see it." I asked what that meant. She lit a cigarette instead. Didn't offer me one. Didn't need to. The smoke curled toward the ceiling fan that wasn't moving. Later, I read the rest of Natalia's notes. She wrote about shadows walking past the patient beds, reflections moving without mirrors, and a clock on the wall, one that had no hands but still made noise. When she stopped writing, the ink dragged off the page. No one signed off her shift. That night, I stayed at a small boarding house near the edge of town, the kind that creaks even when no one's moving. I set the file on the table and stared at the old clock by the wall, its hands frozen at 3:18. For a moment, I thought I saw them tremble. Just once. Then everything went still again. Evelyn had given me the tape earlier, said it was the last thing found in Ward 3. I didn't ask how she got it. Some doors don't open from the inside, not even for her. The recorder was the old kind, hand-cranked metal reels, a whisper machine from another age. It felt wrong to touch it, like it had been waiting too long for anyone's hand. The tape hissed before it spoke. At first, just the same voice, trembling, trapped between breaths. "It's 3:18 again. It won't stop." But then, a pause, a sound I hadn't heard before. Fingers brushing the microphone, soft at first, then harder, like someone trying to find their way out through the static. Then, beneath the noise, a second voice, a whisper that didn't sound like her, lower, closer, saying my name. I let it play out in full. No ending click, no finish. The reel just kept turning, whispering, hissing, as if the tape itself refused to die. When it finally slowed, I noticed the clock again. Still 3:18. The second hand trembling, like it wanted to move but didn't dare. I leaned closer to the recorder. The last breath on the tape wasn't hers. It was slower, deeper, like it came from somewhere past the wall. The lamp flickered, flame bending toward the sound. I killed it quick. Darkness made more sense than seeing something I couldn't name. Before dawn, I stepped outside into the wet streets. Porches sagged under the rain, shutters rattled in the wind, and the town itself seemed to hold its breath. When I returned to the boarding house, I saw the clock again. 3:18, unmoved, and the tape's hiss seemed to echo through the walls, soft, patient, like a heartbeat trapped behind old wood and plaster. I walked into Evelyn's office before sunrise. Shadows clung to the corners like spilled ink. She was already there, leaning against the windowsill, arms crossed, eyes sharper than any bullet I'd ever faced. "You brought it," she said. I set the tape and the file on her desk. No choice, I muttered. Something's wrong with that clock. I pointed at the wall clock. 3:18. It hadn't moved since the night before. Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, her gaze drifted to something carved faintly into the edge of the clock frame. A circle with a cross inside it. I squinted. What the hell is that? She didn't answer, just whispered, almost to herself. Some things are meant to stay where they're trapped, but not all of them. I opened Natalia Farrer's file. Lines of handwriting, neat at first, growing jagged, desperate. Mentions of footsteps, whispers, and the clock. Always stopping at 3:18. I looked up at Evelyn. You knew all this? She didn't deny it, just said enough to know that opening the file means you can't close it again. I cranked the recorder. Static hissed, and then the first voice. It's 3:18 again. It won't stop. But then, the second voice, low, distant, almost mine, whispering questions I hadn't spoken. The air in the room thickened, as if the tape itself had drawn the fog inside. Evelyn's hand hovered near mine, silent. I could feel the pulse of her caution, and maybe her fear. I slammed the file down. Enough of this. That clock, that tape, it's not natural. I stopped. Evelyn's eyes bore into me. You're seeing it now, she said. Everything that happened to her, to the others, you feel it too. The second hand twitched. Once, twice, then still. I swallowed hard. So, it's real. Her gaze softened, just a fraction. Yes, and if you go further, you won't come back the same. I left the office and paused in the hallway. The carved circle with the cross burned itself into my memory. I ran my fingers along the edge of the wall, tracing the symbol. A part of me wanted to destroy it. Another part wanted to understand it. The tape was still running in my coat pocket, hissing. 3:18, and I knew, whatever came next, there was no turning back. I woke before dawn, if you could call it waking. The lamp was still burning low, same dim flame that had been there all night. Outside, the fog had crawled in through the cracks, soft as breath, heavy as guilt. The clock on the table read 3:18. Still, same as before, the hand hadn't moved an inch. I didn't remember sleeping. There was a knock, not hard, not polite. 3 times, slow. When I opened the door, no one stood there. Just the hallway and the smell of wet plaster. Something lay on the floorboards. A folded note, edges damp, written in the same hand as Natalia's file. Basement, West Wing. Keep the light low. No signature, but her fear was there, soaked into the ink. The West Wing had been closed for years, Evelyn said, but the door wasn't locked. It just didn't want to open, like it remembered too much. When it finally gave, the air came out stale and old. A century of quiet exhaled at once. There were beds down there, rusted frames, straps on the rails, and on the wall, that symbol again. The circle and the cross within, drawn in chalk that hadn't faded. Right beneath it, a single word scratched into the plaster. Repeat. I kept my lantern low. The flame shook, maybe from the wind, maybe from me. There were papers scattered on the floor, medical charts turned brittle by time, and near the back, a chair tipped over. A tape recorder sat beside it, older than the one I'd used before, half buried in dust. I turned the crank once. The reel moved, slow, reluctant, and a voice came through the static. If you hear this, the time won't change. Not here, not for us. Then silence, then breathing. Right behind me, I spun around. The light caught a face, not clear, not full, just the outline of someone standing near the wall. A woman, hair pinned back. Natalia. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She lifted a hand and pointed at the clock above the door. It read 3:18. The second hand trembled, then stopped again. When I looked back at her, she was gone, but her voice lingered, faint, like it was whispering through the cracks. "He's still here." I ran my hand over the wall where she'd stood, and the plaster felt warm. Something pulsed beneath it, slow, steady, like a heartbeat buried under stone. And then I saw it. Another clock, half sunk into the wall, its glass cracked, hands frozen the same way. But this one was bleeding. A thin line of dark red ran down the frame, soaking into the mortar. I backed away, the lantern flickering, until I hit the stairs. At the top, the hallway waited. Same air, same silence. But when I looked down again, the light below was gone. And the clock, the one in the basement, started ticking. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, but every step echoed like it came before my foot hit the wood. By the time I reached the top floor, the air smelled like dust, bleach, and something burned long ago. And then I remembered why I'd come here. They said they'd pay me to find a ghost. Said her name was Natalia Ferrer. But now I wasn't sure anyone had ever called me at all. Evelyn stood near the far wall, half hidden by shadow. I almost didn't see her move. "You knew this was never about money," I said. Her eyes flicked toward the clock. "That's what it takes," she whispered. "It calls people who can still hear it." "Who pays for that?" I asked. She gave the smallest, coldest smile. "There's no payment. There never was. You were already here." The clock trembled, glass bending inward like lungs drawing a first breath. 3:18. Always 3:18. Evelyn took a slow step forward. "You understand now," she said. "You were the one who started it. You opened the wrong door." The ticking slowed, stopped, and then moved, just once, to 3:19. The sound that followed didn't belong in this world. It shook the windows, cracked the paint, and somewhere below every locked door unlatched itself at once. Evelyn shouted something, but the air tore her words apart. I saw her silhouette vanish in the white light pouring from the clock face. And for a second, I thought I saw Natalia behind the glass, eyes open, still breathing, trapped inside the minute. I ran, through corridors that bent and repeated. Every turn brought me back to the same hallway, the west wing, the circle, the cross. The second hand clicked once, back to 3:18. Again, Evelyn caught up to me. Her hand gripped my arm with unexpected strength. "You need to understand," she said. "We're not alive here. Not really. Natalia, me, we're trapped in this space between seconds. The clock keeps us tethered, bound to the moment we can't escape." I swallowed, but the words stuck in my throat. So that's what this place was, a pocket of time, repeating endlessly, and I had just walked into it. I looked back at the clock, its glass warped like it was breathing, and behind it I saw shadows of the other patients. Figures frozen mid-step, staring at something only they could see. Evelyn's voice came softer, almost a whisper. "They watch, waiting for someone who can still choose." Her eyes met mine. "For a moment, you could be free, but once it finds you, you belong to it too." When I woke, I was outside. The hospital was gone, or maybe it had never been there. The wind carried the faint chime of a distant bell. I reached into my coat, found the folded note from the first night. No writing, just the imprint of a clock face, frozen at 3:18. And then I understood. No one hired me to find a ghost. They hired the ghost to find me. The bell rang once more, metallic, hollow, and from somewhere behind the wind a whisper carried, "Welcome back."